Hi, and welcome back. I'm here with Mr. Ira Carter, who is a Navy pilot from the Vietnam era.
Right.
Very interesting time, and most of us are in that age bracket from that Vietnam era, as much as I hate to admit it, Ira. But you're a very interesting person. You've had some great experiences. What was it like to be a Navy pilot?
It was a good experience. I always wanted to be a Navy pilot from the time I was a kid.
Really?
I mean, like about 6 or 7 years old. You know, my mom used to have this little book about here's what you want to be, and sometimes I'd have doctor down there because she was telling me that. And then finally, I put in there, I wanted to be a naval aviation cadet. I wanted to be a Navy pilot. I loved all the Navy movies about landing aboard carriers and things like that. And finally, one day I was one.
Wow, so good for you for following your dream now, because a lot of people do what mom and dad want them to do. So you were telling me...
But I should have been a doctor.
But you were telling me there's some extensive training that comes with being a pilot.
Well, there's all sorts of training. You have the ground training, and we have about ground school before we even start flying. There's about 4 months of that, and then you have almost 2 years, depending on the weather. You have almost 2 years of actual flight training, and in that flight training, you're going to go through different things like learning how to land aboard a carrier, and even after you become a pilot, there's things like jumping off of a boat and into a water in a harness to teach you what it's like if you land in the water with a parachute.
Wow.
So there's all sorts of training going on.
I imagine. Now, and you were also talking about some of the different missions. I know you brought several pictures in that we'll have up shortly. We can have you talk about those different pictures. You were talking about going out on a cruise. One of your pictures that will be up shortly is that time that you were talking about that. What's that all about? You had so many different ones.
A
here,
cruise.
See a picture here.
What you're seeing right now is the ship that I was based on for 2 cruises, a combat cruise, as opposed to a luxury cruise that you might take nowadays. But that was the USS Kitty Hawk, and we're leaving San Diego, and that was in 1967. November or December 1967. I remember it was just before Christmas. But anyway, we would go out there for 6 months, but it never lasted 6 months. It always went about 10 months.
10 months.
And so that was when we went out on the first one, and I went out on another cruise about a year later.
Right, and so 10 months out at sea, what's that like? I've heard some stories from my husband because he was in the Navy also. But tell everybody what that was like.
You know, it's okay. It's just a way of life. You're into that kind of a life. You know, you might have, a family back home. But it's just a way of life, and you just get to do that. And you just do it every day, and you don't worry about it.
Well, here's a picture of you as
that's
a young
I was a
man.
Lieutenant JG. That was on my first cruise, and so, but some of the things we were getting away with, because you can see like my belt buckle right there, because that was custom made in the Philippines. We could get away with a lot in the Navy because you were over in Vietnam. So we would have custom made boots, we'd have custom made belts and buckles and things like that.
I wouldn't have known that.
And so we were different from, say, the East Coast Navy.
Oh, really? I didn't know there was a difference.
Oh, yeah, there's a difference. There's the East Coast Navy, the West Coast Navy, at that time because of Vietnam. Mostly everyone on the West Coast went to Vietnam, and the Navy really didn't bother with you. So you get away with a lot of things.
And you were telling me that it's completely different today than, as far as being a Navy pilot, than it was back when you were?
It's probably not completely different. Now, the picture that you're seeing right now this is a picture of the carrier like you would see from the air during flight operations. And what happens is we launch off at a certain time, and 1 hour and a half later, there's a second launch, and we land right after they're launched off. And what you're seeing is in the middle of a launch, you see one aircraft on the catapult off to the left side, and then another airplane that's actually going to pull up behind them and be launched off.
Right,
If you saw the complete picture, you'll see also aircraft that are being launched off the front or the bow. And once they're all done, we have to kind of time it to what we see on the deck so that we come back into the pattern and we're ready to land the moment they have a clear deck.
Wow.
And you'll catch it if you were that late, because you don't have much, the carrier doesn't have much time.
Now, do you go through a lot of simulation training before you ever?
Now, see, in the newer Navy, they do a lot of simulation training. And we didn't have a lot of that when I was there up until 1971.
Wow.
But as into 1971, there was a lot of simulation training in there, and I never really even got to use those. They used those for air combat type missions, and you did that extensively. We didn't have that when I was going through.
Wow. And so well, how did you train for that? It had to be terrifying the first time that you were actually expected to land on one of those decks.
You were well trained for it. I was a student pilot, and I always thought that you always had an instructor with you the first time, but no, you didn't. And but believe me, you were kind of comfortable. They trained you so well that you didn't even want it. This is a picture right now of our squadron aircraft, and I was in Fighter Squadron 114. I don't know if you can see those numbers on the aircraft. And we had the stripe on the airplane simply because when we would join up after we launched off the carrier, we would join up by squadron. And oftentimes we'd waste a lot of fuel and time joining up on the other squadron. So we actually painted that stripe on our aircraft so that you could always tell from a distance that was your squadron's airplane. If it didn't have a stripe, don't join up on them.
Right.
So that was the reason for that.
So now, what are some of the other exciting missions, if you can call them exciting?
Well, we had quite a few combat missions. I flew over 200 combat missions in North Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
Some more exciting than others. Some were at night. Night missions were particularly scary because at night you had more of a chance of crashing than somebody shooting you down.
Right.
And so night missions were a little bit on the hairy side most of the time, not all the time. And during the daytime, it was okay. The scary ones is when we were on a large, what we called an alpha strike, where you'd have 32 airplanes launch off the carrier and we would bomb a place like Hanoi or Haiphong or someplace like that. And there were surface-to-air missiles, bullets flying all the way over, and it always brought back memories of the movies I used to watch.
Oh, right. Why you got into it in the first place.
Hey, the flak is so thick I could get out and walk on it. And I thought that actually when flying in the mission. So it was exciting, especially when you look back on it.
Right. If you had to do it over again, would you still want to be?
Absolutely.
See, that's great.
Absolutely.
And do you ever go out and encourage other young people to get involved with this?
If I could, I would. I'm normally not in that realm to talk to younger people now. I would have been some years ago, but not now.
We need guys like you, though, because so many of them don't really know what to do.
Absolutely.
What do you think you got, though, from your experience of being in the Navy, as a Navy pilot, that you might not have gotten otherwise?
That's a big question.
Let's say you went to be a doctor. Yeah, I bet you did.
You grew up a lot, and you've learned a lot in life, and a lot of things don't bother me now.
Getting the signal that we're finished with our
Okay.
Okay, so
Well,
come back. We'll see you again. Thanks, Ira,
Okay,
so
thank you
much.
very much.